Good morning, everyone. And so again, with the meditation session, the first part focusing on the breath, and second part, meditation, analytical meditation, and this on meditation on death, particularly the disadvantages of not remembering death, and the advantages of recalling to mind our death, particularly in relation to the idea of as a way of keeping one's mind focused on the Dharma. So again, the principal thing here in the first part of the meditation is to try to keep the mind in the present moment so that we're best prepared to engage in the main body of the meditation. Excuse me, Jason, just interrupting for a moment. In case he's going to come closer up the hill, to ask him, just say we're doing meditation now. Yeah. So just sorry for interrupting like that, but there was, it's like just talking to the people. Sorry. Yeah, if you can go and ask him. Oh, because he's going to come up, he's going to make a lot of noise. Yeah. So yeah, someone was using one of those, the blowers, and it was going to make quite a bit of noise. So just requesting that he do it after the meditation session, after the teaching preferably too. So here, our business as best as possible to keep the mind focused on the breath. And to use whatever method that you have to do this, and then if not, then you can use the method of observing sensation of the breath as it comes in and goes out through the nostrils as best as possible to keep it focused on that sensation. And as the different distractions arise, just to note these, to be alert to their arisal, to note them, and to bring the mind back to the breath. So then we can continue like that for the first part of the meditation session. Okay, so then with the main part of the meditation is meditation on death. As said in the Buddhist tradition, or certainly Lamrim tradition and elsewhere, that the meditation on death is the supreme one in order to keep one's mind focused on the Dharma. So the analogy, they say, just as the ploughing of the fields in autumn is the supreme ploughing, in that in India, autumn time follows the rainy season and the ground is still moist. And so at that time is the best time for engaging in the practice, the farmer, for doing the ploughing of the fields. And then the supreme of footprints is the elephant's, most definite, most clear and distinct. Then the meditation on death is the most effective in general to keep one's mind focused on the practice of the Dharma. And so then the disadvantages of not recalling to mind death, that firstly, that if we don't recall death, then we don't remember the practice of Dharma. We forget about Dharma. And secondly, even if we remember Dharma, we forget to practice it. So there may be a recollection and an awareness of it, but it becomes easy still to procrastinate, to put it off and do it at some other time. Whereas this recollection of death, not only do you remember the Dharma, but encourages you to practice the Dharma. And then if we don't remember death, even though we may recall to mind the Dharma, and we may practice Dharma, but there is a problem of practicing the Dharma purely. Because our mind comes so easily under the sway of the worldly dharmas. That is, the mind becomes intoxicated by the habit built up over many lifetimes, and in this life, the worldly dharmas of being attracted to material gain and pleasure and fame and power and praise. And so even when we practice the Dharma, our Dharma practice becomes polluted by an impure motivation. So even if we're engaging in Dharma practice, involved in a Dharma center or whatever it is, we see ourselves as a Dharma person, still our activities are influenced very much by these worldly dharmas. So we engage in the practices, we do various things, meditation practice, retreat, doing preliminaries, making holy objects. But even when we do these, our mind can be conditioned by the need for praise, to be praised by others for the virtues that we create. or else even involved in the Dharma center, our natural predisposition may be towards power. We may have a lot of pride. And so we may even be drawn to the idea of gaining power through our practices, whether they be psychic powers or powers in that community, influence in that community. Or for reputation, a good reputation. So the practice, something looks like very good, but it is conditioned by these worldly motivations. So the remembrance of death, you see, remembering death, you can't start to see how superficial and hollow are those motivations. Cut through the deception. Then also, if we don't remember death, we may remember the Dharma, we may remember practice it, we may in our own way practice it purely, but the risk is that we don't practice it consistently, not regularly. So just like how it is that if you try to heat water on a flame, gas flame, no matter how long you put it there, if you keep turning the gas on and off, the water won't boil. Then also, if we don't recall to mind death, then we don't create the causes for attaining our own liberation and enlightenment. Because we don't cultivate the virtue, nor do we abandon the non-virtue, so we can't attain the state of liberation or enlightenment. Then also, if we don't recall to mind death, then we die with regret. Death time comes as awareness that we lost the opportunity of making use of this life in a positive way. We had the right circumstances. It's human life, not only human life, but the various aspects of the perfect human rebirth. Opportunity was there. And we didn't take hold of it because we didn't remember death, and we got swept up by the worldly dharmas. And then to reflect not only the shortcomings of not recalling death, but to recall to mind the benefits of remembering death. And firstly here, if we remember death, that it means our activity of this life with our body, speech and mind becomes positive. We live our life creating virtue. We're a positive influence in this world. And this is because we will remember the Dharma and the importance of practicing Dharma. And we'll practice Dharma. So our actions will become positive. Then not only when we remember death do our actions become positive, our activity of body, speech and mind become positive, but also our actions of body, speech and mind become powerful because they're no longer weakened by the worldly dharmas, from that craving mind, craving after power and material gain, pleasure, praise, reputation. These qualities of mind of working for just merely for the happiness of this life, superficial happiness of this life, weaken the power of our virtue. So if we recall to mind our death, our actions become positive based on them not being conditioned by the worldly dharmas. So you can get some sort of sense of that in terms of the lamas, of Lama, His Holiness Lama Zopa, Lama Yeshe, how the mind is free. The minds are free from the worldly dharmas. They're not conditioned by that, not conditioned by a habit, lifetime's habit of the worldly dharmas. So their actions become very, very powerful. There's a sense, for instance, with Lama Zopa, that his concern is not just with him, just himself. His concern is not just with his life. It's for the benefit of others. So when he speaks, his speech is very powerful. And if he manifests wrath, it becomes very powerful because there's a recognition that that's not out of anger arising out of the worldly dharmas, one's own importance and so on. It's coming from a mind free from the worldly dharmas. So his action, that strong, words of scolding, whatever it might be, become very powerful. And then the recollection of death is important in the beginning, in the middle, and the end. How it pervades, you could say it pervades Buddha's practice. See it in the life of the Buddha. How it was at the start of his spiritual journey as Prince Siddhartha. He saw sickness, aging, death, saw death. And that, in a sense, initiated his journey on the spiritual path. Important in the beginning. It's the recognition of impermanence, that we can't possess things, we can't hold them, we're going to be separated from them. So this leads to the mind of renunciation, aspiration to be free, based on recognizing the shortcomings of remaining in samsara and the benefits of getting out. And recollection of death is important throughout our spiritual practice. Common thing it's advised first thing in the morning to remember, this could be the last day of my life. Death is more definite than is tomorrow. And then it's important at the end, in terms you can see from the life of the Buddha, his death time then was a reminder that death comes as it came to him, comes to everyone. So he used his death as a teaching to remind us of the importance, to remember this every day of the life. And then death is also important because that means that we will die without regret. Because we've had awareness of death throughout this life, our mind will be prepared for death. And also because there'll be less of an awareness, or we would have created a lot less negativity, an awareness that we tried to use our life in a positive way. So a die without regrets and with a mind of peace. So then just to dedicate, what are the positive results from recalling to mind the subject of death? That we utilize it in a positive way, particularly in terms of developing an alertness within the mind to keep ourselves focused on the practice of the Dharma. Okay, so thank you.
Great. Thanks again.
Just go back.